Today, welcome. Today we will have a discussion of whether or not you should give a deadline to your goals. A couple years ago, I was reading two books simultaneously, The 4-Hour Workweek and Never Eat Alone. And when I got to the goal setting part, each of these books had absolutely different guidelines. One said that you should always give yourself a deadline and get your things done by that time. The other said, don't give yourself a deadline and just wing it. So then I was confused and I went into the research, and the research said the same thing. Basically, it works to have a deadline and it works not to have a deadline. So what do we do with this conundrum? Let me take you back in time for a second. 8 years ago, I realized I wanted to be a speaker, but I had no idea how. So I went into a coach and he helped me create a set of goals and some milestones that I could achieve in order to become a speaker. The thing is, after those coaching sessions ended, I completely forgot about this. Fast forward 4 years and I moved to a different continent because I was convinced that to become a speaker I needed to have a master's degree. So I just went and studied in Europe and did the whole ordeal, and I was like, okay, I'm ready to be a speaker now. Then after I got my master's, the pandemic hit and I couldn't be a speaker. I could be a speaker, but only on Zoom. So I did that. 2 years later, then I finally was able to speak with people, but I became a digital nomad. So then for 1 year, I was just moving from one place to the other, and I was never staying enough in one place to become a solid speaker that speaks in front of hundreds of peoples. So about 8 months ago, finally, I decided to fully commit to being a speaker in person. I made the decision to stop traveling so much, to stay in one place, and to really focus on the business aspect of having a speaking business. It took me 8 years to become committed and take consistent action towards my goal. I have this wonderful teacher, and she always says, when you're setting your goals, always leave some space for the force of life. This means that you cannot control what's going to go on in the world. I didn't know there was going to be a pandemic and that I was going to have to postpone my speaking business for 2 years. But it's still important that we make decisions that are based in our desires and the things that we want to achieve. So back to the initial question, should we give ourselves a deadline or not? Well, yes and no. We can give ourselves a deadline, but it doesn't mean that it will happen in that time. It doesn't mean that it's going to happen in the way that we want it to happen either. So yeah, you can set a deadline, you can have a picture of what the goal will look like when you get there, but still, the force of life will have its say in it. I'll tell you one thing that really helps me is to give the milestones deadlines. For example, I gave myself a deadline to start this YouTube channel and I did it within that time frame. And I gave myself deadlines to study marketing, hire my virtual assistant, do all of these different things that are part of the process of achieving the goal, but are milestones in between you and that you want to achieve. Remember that life is a collaboration with life itself, and we don't always get to dictate how things are going to go. But it's still important to have direction, and it might be helpful to set some deadlines so we can get moving and get grooving and get some things going. All right, hope that was helpful. It was certainly for me to distinguish whether I was going to give a deadline for things or not and be like, somewhere in the middle. How is it for you? Do you give yourself deadlines or do you prefer to keep it loose and groovy? Let me know in the comments. I actually want to know. Thank you for watching until the end, and see you next week with another psychology video. Okay, bye-bye.